Well, hello there and welcome to another edition of 5 Minute Friday. My name's Steve Smith. I'm one of the ministers at the Beltline Church of Christ, and I'm so glad you clicked on this video. There's a phrase that I want to look at today that's introduced to us in Matthew chapter 10, verse 14. Jesus is sending His 12 apostles out to preach and teach the coming kingdom, and He gives them power to heal the sick and raise the dead, cleanse lepers and cast out demons. All the amazing things that He had been doing, Jesus delivers that authority to His disciples. But when, I want you to notice the word when, not if, when the message of the kingdom was rejected in towns and villages, Jesus told His disciples to shake the dust from their feet as they left. It's as if Jesus knew that His message wasn't going to be received everywhere. But what is this shaking the dust thing all about? That's what I want to spend a little time talking about. The command to shake the dust off your feet appears only 4 times in the New Testament. And in each case, the command is spoken by Jesus to His disciples, whom He sent out 2 by 2 with the message of the coming kingdom. In Mark chapter 6, verse 11, Jesus says, "If any place will not welcome you or listen to you, leave that place and shake the dust off your feet as a testimony against them." In Matthew chapter 10, Jesus is going to clarify the meaning even further when in verse 15 He says, "Truly I tell you, it will be more bearable for Sodom and Gomorrah on the day of judgment than for that town that rejects the message." And so shaking the dust off of one's feet conveys the same idea as our modern phrase, "I'm washing my hands of this situation." It was a symbolic indication that a person had done all that could be done in a situation, and therefore they carry no further responsibility for it. Where the apostles were received with joy, they were supposed to stay and continue to teach and preach. But when their message was rejected, they had no further responsibility. They were free to walk away with a clear conscience, knowing they had done all that God had asked them to do. So shaking the dust off of their feet was in effect saying that those who had rejected God's truth, we're not going to allow you to hinder the gospel any further. We're going to move on to people who want to hear it, who want the message. And even the dust of those cities that rejected the Lord would not be allowed to cling to the feet of God's messengers. And so embedded within this symbolic gesture is the implication that God also saw when His disciples shook the dust off their feet, and He would be the one who would judge those people accordingly. There's a spiritual significance to a disciple of Jesus shaking the dust off of his feet. It was a statement of finality about people who had been given the truth but who had rejected that truth. Even Paul and Barnabas on their first missionary journey put Jesus' words into practice. They had been preaching and teaching in Antioch of Pisidia, but some of the Jewish leaders of that city stirred up persecution against the missionaries and had them kicked out of the region. And so what did they do? Exactly what Jesus said. They shook the dust off their feet as a warning to them, and then they moved on to the city of Iconium. Antioch may not have welcomed the gospel as they should have, but that wasn't going to stop them from spreading that message to other areas. Paul and Barnabas had done all they were sent to do, and the responsibility was now on the shoulders of those that lived in Antioch. The apostles had proclaimed the truth. Some had accepted it, some had rejected it, and now whatever happened in Antioch of Pisidia was going to be on their own heads, not on those of the apostles. It's an incredible phrase, shake the dust off your feet. Let me say one more thing and we'll finish this for this week. According to biblical historians, when a Jew returned from traveling in a Gentile land, he literally shook the dust from his clothes and feet because he didn't want to bring anything heathen. He didn't even want to bring heathen soil into Judea. It was a gesture of disgust. And so think about that. Think about the implications of what's being said as these Jews in Jewish cities are shaking the dust off their feet. When the apostles went around preaching the gospel of the kingdom, or when Paul went around preaching the gospel of the grace of God, they shook the dust off their feet to show God's disapproval of their unbelieving audiences. It was an insult for a Jewish town to be treated as though it were Gentile, but that's exactly what they were. Those unsaved Jews were just as unbelieving as those unsaved pagans. Bottom line, the dust shaking was a sign of condemnation, and it was a powerful one. We're going to be talking about this section of Scripture a little bit further on Sunday. I hope that you'll join us, whether in line or on person. So glad you joined us for this edition of 5 Minute Friday, and I'll look forward to seeing you, good Lord willing, back here on Sunday. Have a great week, and may God bless you as you strive to live for Him.